Christians, I have seen nothing more embarrassing, particularly when it comes to social media platforms such as these. I've never seen something so embarrassing is when people canonize ridiculous ideas by, for example, him using laughing emojis, thinking that he said something that was heavyweight and profound when it was actually completely incorrect and unprofound. Now he says sins were dealt with in Old Testament sacrifices from the law of Moses. Then he says, I'm full of excuses. I'm not making any excuses, sir. You and me can talk anytime you want, live or privately. Doesn't matter. I don't make excuses or run from the truth. The problem is you simply have an incapacity to seem to want to accept it and embrace it. And the foolishness of these comments continue to show you the lack of depth that needs to be understood in order to embrace wholly the gospel in how God intends it for us to understand it. You say that sin was dealt with in the Old Testament. Sin was not dealt with. Sin had a patch. What the law of Moses did was give God the grounds to forbear and to exercise patience in the sins of those that were committed before Christ came. But the law of God never took away any sins at all. Never. So when you say dealt with, we need to understand what is meant. But I know that what you mean is completely wrong, but what you're saying does have relevance. In other words, you say sin was dealt with. It was dealt with, but you say it was dealt with in the sense that it took away sin and provided forgiveness. I know that's what you mean because of the last two silly comments you made. But what it does actually mean was that sin was dealt with through the sacrificial system and through the law of Moses. It was dealt with as a temporary band-aid until what those band-aids prefigured represented. And they represented the work that Christ would do in the future. So the sacrificial system put on hold condemnation until the Messiah would come and shed his blood for the remission of sins, because the blood that was shed by animals, goats, and bulls were not taking away sins. That blood was not providing the remission of anyone's sins. So the problem here is not what I'm saying. The problem is your lack of ability to understand plain language. So again, just like in the last post that I responded to of yours, I'm going to send this passage again out of Romans 3, and hopefully you might take a look at it. And if you have the humility to understand what it says, I would love to hear back from you and say, I get it now. Or come back to me and explain how I got it wrong. I would welcome that. We don't have to have these stupid tit for tat cat fights. If I'm wrong, be a man and explain to me what this passage means. Tell me how I got it wrong and correct me. I'm willing to be corrected, my friend. Be provoked, be persuaded.